recording. Someone's texting me, can you hear me? Everyone is muted because we're getting some reverb. Let me try it again. How's that, guys? Hey, Katie.
I don't hear anything.
Hey there.
Sadie, you're saying you can't hear me?
I can hear you, but it was bouncing back a lot, and when I talk, it bounces back on me as well.
We don't hear a reverb from you, but
Okay, then I'm good.
okay, I got a few people texting me. They're having some technical difficulties getting in, so we're going to give it another minute or two. Hey, Melinda. If everybody would, because the easiest way to keep track of who's here is if everyone would just type their name into the chat box, that would be great. That way we could just make sure that we have a record of everybody. Again,
I cannot do that.
Okay, so Sandy, I'm typing you in, okay?
Thank you.
We are going to, again, we're recording it. We'll be posting the recording as soon as it's zipped and it can be posted to the web. Everything we go over today, all the documents will be included or sent to you, and also the all of the forms that we'll as well, and we'll also include them all in our newsletter on Friday afternoon. Hey there, Neil, how's it going? We've got a few folks with some technical difficulties, so we're just giving them a few minutes to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you'll type your name into the chat box. You can go get your coffee and come back. Go ahead. We're doing that for a record of attendance, just so we know who all is. Hopefully everybody's having a chance to enjoy some of this nice fall weather. I was really surprised that it's actually fall in Georgia in September. Of course, I'm asking questions and I have everybody muted, so that doesn't help, right? Okay, I'm gonna get out for just a minute and send someone a link, so just bear with me 1 second. Having some difficulties here. All right. Let me. All right, we're going to give it 1 more minute and then we're going to get started in the interest of time because we do have a lot of stuff to go over today. And I realize it's early on a Wednesday morning, but wanted to try and get it done before our community call today, because I know after me, sort of after Wednesday at lunch, things start rolling towards the weekend, and this way we could have it on everybody's radar quickly as possible. All right, it's 8:34. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming, and I'm sure we're going to have others joining us. Certainly hope so, because we have lots of money that's available for our region. I'm just going to put it out there bluntly. It's $1,378,515 that are available for rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, non-congregate shelter, emergency shelter, and street outreach. Today we're going to be talking about emergency shelter, the emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and homelessness prevention. The slides you'll notice all of them will have DCA logos, colors, or emblems on them. That's because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted you to hear as clearly as possible directly from DCA. And I probably should back up just a bit. As you already know, because you're here, but just for the recording, Home for Good, a program of the United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley, was awarded a regional implementation for ESG Cares. To be able to react, respond, and plan for those affected by COVID-19. Terry, can you slide one more? Can you? Okay. I need you to bring up the overview first, please, ma'am. Because we're going to go over just some general information quickly about the about emergency solution grants. No, yeah, go to the other one. Thank you. Talking about the just and I'm going to and start talking about the first couple of slides. There we go. Of course, you know the CARES funding was voted on in Congress in March, was approved in April, and released being sort of a loose term because some jurisdictions still have not received their check. We are in phase 2 in Georgia for CARES funding, and phase 1, the check was just literally received just weeks ago. So I won't bore you with all those details, but sort of that's the way it goes. So we'll keep going. We'll go ahead and advance a couple. And again, it's to help those respond, plan for, and for those affected by COVID. You guys are what would be called subgrantees should you apply and receive funding. Again, Home for Good is the grantee for the regional implementation, and some of the things that you're going to have in the requirements on your application, you're going to do a narrative. Dudes, for any of you who have ever done ESG applications, I'm calling this the abbreviated. Okay, and I'm like, my hands are moving and everything else, and no one can see it because I turned off my video. Stop. Sorry about that. Hang on right there, Terry. This is very, very abbreviated. Literally, couple of days, you could have this thing filled out. So it's not painful. Trust me, it's not painful. But you will have to do a short narrative. There is $1,000, I keep saying 1,000 character limit on the narrative. So Sandy, bring it down. And she knows what I'm saying. We always juggle during other application seasons about getting our words concise, and lots of abbreviations we put in there. Some other things you'll need as part of the applications. You'll need your certificate of existence from a Secretary of State, your 501c3. This is not new to any of you guys who have applied for federal, state, or local funds before. Same stuff you have to have everybody else. If you do CDBG, if you do ESG, or frankly, if you do COC funded through the NOFA process. Talking about your financials and your 990s, if applicable. Okay, of course, and to a list of the board of directors. You want to go ahead and keep going, Terry? Going to talk a lot about in the application. You need to talk about your organization's capacity to pull these things off, because again, we're adding capacity to the community, but with that, we have to add the capacity to the organization. FYI, case management staff expenses have been built in to the writing of the original regional grant. So yes, there are dollars available in every one of these for case management. However, as with everything else, carrying out the duties and providing the direct service to the clients, the carrying out the duties should not be more than the direct service that's provided to the client. So if you're in a rapid rehousing program and you're requesting $30,000 in rental assistance, but you're requesting $50,000 in case management, it's not fly. So just an FYI on that, okay? So talking about building capacity, this is a real game changer in our community, folks. Real game changer if we use it to our advantage. this can literally change the face of the way we work and the way we do business and those that we can serve. Go ahead, Terry, please. So again, I'm not going to sit here and bore you guys and read this to you. It talks about financial policies, all the things we've talked about and talked about and talked about in all of the other things that we do. So making sure that all of those things are together, because it's a, you know, as a fiduciary agent, Home for Good will be responsible for overseeing the reimbursements that go to DCA, which means before we get to that point, we will be making sure that everything is absolutely positively documented, because we will be the ones who do the direct reimbursements to the subgrantees, and then we will have to be forward. So if I'm going to have to sign my name to the reimbursement request, everything will be documented and appropriate so it can go forward. And I'll go in as we go in through the application, and some of the indicators and some of the things that are necessary in the for the program and for the documentation. We'll go over some more of that. Keep going, Terry. Again, I'm not going to bore this group. Most of you have done this way more times than me. The certificate of existence, again, this is DCA slides they put together in case new programs, new agencies, and everything else. And we are encouraging everybody in the community to apply. Again, we will send this out in the community call today. We will also send it out to all of you, then to all those in the continuum of care, and then those in our news that'll get our newsletters on Friday. So go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and flip through the next couple of slides, Terry, because it talks about the things that these folks here already know. If anybody has a question, if you'll chat something, tell me to stop, whatever, in the chat box, because I'm monitoring the chat here, I will stop. But again, talking about the board members, really important, guys. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but you need to make sure you have folks with lived experience serving in decision-making positions within your organization, whether they're volunteer, staff, board, especially on the board. That is really, I mean, it's a no-brainer because it's a requirement from HUD. You have to have those. There you go. For those folks with lived experience on your board and helping to guide your program and holding all of us accountable. Keep going, Terry. The financial statements, again, explains what, if you don't do this, then you can this, that, and the other. Have any questions, concerns about it, don't hesitate. Just send an email asking the questions, just knowing, in the interest of fairness, if someone has a question about something on the application, that's a general question. First of all, we can't answer program-specific questions. But if it's a general question, well, I don't have an independent audit, but I can bring in, you know, my balance sheet or this, that, and the other. We will answer your question, but then we will also send it out as part of our weekly newsletter for the FAQs, so everybody can get the same answer to the same question. Just again, in the interest of transparency. All right, we can go ahead, Terry, and let's switch over to the next presentation. While she's pulling that up, any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Am I boring you to death? Don't answer that, Neil. All right, let's take it to the top. All right. Again, we're going to talk today about rapid rehousing. You can go ahead. Rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, and emergency shelter right now looks different. And this can fund and can only fund non-congregate shelter. Folks, another way of saying that is Hotel-Motel. However, don't tell anyone you have a Hotel-Motel program, because we all know what's going to happen. Excuse me, everybody's going to have a need for your Hotel-Motel voucher. So that being said, remembering now forward, ESG cares, this funding, everyone who is served must first start with coordinated entry. They must first start with coordinated entry. I've seen a few new people join us. If you will, for attendance purposes, if you'll type your name in the chat box, that would be great. Thank you so much. Every interaction or every client who's enrolled in ESG's CARES programs must come through coordinated entry. This is and we will see that as we go through the slides, but wanted to go ahead and point that out. Emergency shelter is usually limited to 30 days. And of course, not everything happens exactly in 30 days. So things will have to be adjusted, but know that that's always the goal. We always say the minute the client gets enrolled in a program, think about the exit. We want positive exits to permanent housing, so you immediately start working with housing service providers and those who can provide permanent housing assistance. For these services, for emergency shelter, non-congregate shelter, only 2 categories that are eligible. We don't make the rules. This just is what it is. There needs to be, go ahead, keep going, Terry. There needs to be documentation thereof, and there's several ways to document them. All of these forms that are alluded to in here, and again, for those who've just joined, this literally is the DCA presentation they did with many of us earlier this year for the regional implementations. The only things that were removed were the things that applied to statewide implementations. This is just this is their words, their documentation that's needed, their forms that are needed. But one thing being said, that every form that is a requirement is going to be furnished to all subgrantees upon signing of the contracts, of the subgrantee contract, and in a PDF fillable format. So you don't have to print anything out, make a copy, get a signature, whatever. Everything will be in a PDF fillable format, and that will help with uploading of the documentation to ClientTrack. DCA is really supporting the fact that most of the things that we have in those files and that piece of paper that slips out and goes underneath the filing cabinet, then you can't find it when you're looking for it, can be stored in client files, uploaded to ClientTrack. That way it's always there when needed. So again, all the forms will be made in a fillable format. I'm not going to read to you all of these forms, but if you've done DCA before or ESG before, you will be familiar with them. If you haven't, one of the things that we're putting together, that we've put together in the packet of information that will go out after this call, well, it'll go out today because we're going to get the recording compressed so everybody can have that as well. Is the ESG Cares handbook that has just come out, literally just came out last week. So all of this is explained in there too, and everything else. So that will be enormously helpful for everybody. It's sometimes a dry read, but it's really got great information. So again, go ahead and go, Terry, talking about one of the things in these slides, and we may have flipped past it already, but let me point out, many times we're working with a client, and no matter how hard we try, we can't get the verification, that he's been staying on the porch around the corner from our office all the time. Because the only one who sees it is us, and we cannot certify for our own agency. Your agency has another program, that program can't certify for your agency either. But you can document your due diligence in attempting to obtain that documentation. Again, those are in case notes in ClientTrack. If the due diligence is noted, then it will be allowable. But we've got to show that we have actually tried. Just saying, well, I called, so-and-so and see if they could verify it. They said, no, that's not due diligence. You've got to have done something repeatedly over a period of time. And you must document it on the date that you do it. I can't document today, September the 23rd. On August the 1st, I saw Jim and took him there. On the 15th of August, I did that. No, it has to be documented in the guidelines of 3 days of it happening, is in the DCA manual. It needs to be documented within 3 days. So if you're going to do ESG cares, it has to be documented within 3 days. Everything that you do with that client has to be documented in 3 days. You enroll the client when you start working with them, not when you're ready to move them into your shelter, not when you're ready to move them into rapid rehousing, but you enroll them on the date you start working with them. Go ahead, Terry. Again, these categories of homelessness, these are DCA. Of course, are those who are victims of domestic violence would be immediately referred to our victim service providers, and they will take it from there in their in their comparable database that none of us have access to because of safety and concerns for their clients. If that victim service provider could not provide services, then we would take their file and it would be at a higher level of security within our own system, so as not to risk the safety of those who are fleeing. So keep going, please. Case management, again, I mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation and will continue to say it. Everything that is an expense that is allowable through ESG cares, whether it's in rapid rehousing, hotel-motel, non-congregate emergency shelter, or homelessness prevention, must start with coordinated entry. In our area, that means that starts with a call to 211. That being said, we'll need to make sure that everybody here too also has the fillable PDF format for the coordinated entry intake that the 211 operators do. So for instance, if someone shows up at ABC agency and says, hey, I want to enroll in your rapid rehousing program, Joan. Well, rather than come, well, you have to call this and that and the other, your agency can help them immediately by going ahead, helping them to fill out that form, emailing it over to coordinated entry, which is Tammy and our newest member, Kathy, and we can go ahead and make sure that those connections are made right away. That next step of coordinated entry can be done, if not immediately, but within 24 hours. And you can schedule that client for, the next day after that to come back and start. Because if that client chooses to enroll in your program, that is the ultimate referral, and that client choice comes first above all else. So just putting that out there as well. So doing knowing that case management covers more than just saying, hey, how you doing? It covers making sure that the clients get benefits and this, that, and the other. We're going to have a link to the Georgia Cares site, that takes you to just a couple clicks away from getting benefits for all your clients. So go ahead and move on, Terry, because I'm babbling and we've got a lot more to cover. Again, just some other eligible expenses. Keep going, please. Okay, stop right here, please. Homelessness prevention. Now, many of you have heard, you have sent it out over the past week and a half, of the CDC's moratorium on eviction. Well, that came out just about the time that the ESG cares phase 2 were announced and the prevention dollars were announced. Then we said, well, what do we do? Well, literally had a call yesterday afternoon with DCA, and they said, as of right now, because the moratorium is in effect, HUD has said that no prevention dollars from ESG can be used because there shouldn't be any evictions for non-payment of rent. That being said, we all know that that means when the moratorium is over on January 1, 2021, we're all going to be pulling out our hair because it's going to be, oh my gosh, and everybody, is going to be like a cat on fire. One of the things we have underway is several agencies, organizations, community leaders are contacting congressmen and senators because they were the only ones who can override that and allow these funds to be used in the time where there's a moratorium in place. So throwing that out there. But that being said, the prevention dollars can be used just later on in this process. At this time, after January 1st, 2021. Just hang on there, Terry, if you will, please. So we're going to go ahead and if agencies want to apply for those prevention dollars, just knowing that the award of those dollars will come a couple weeks after rapid rehousing and emergency shelter, because those two will be used first, and because you won't be able to expend those dollars. In the call yesterday in DC with DCA, and in the HUD call on last Friday, many of us across the country asked in a myriad of ways if there's any way we could get a client to qualify for even case management using prevention dollars while the moratorium is on. It was very clear, no. If the client doesn't qualify because they can't be defined as at risk or at imminent risk, then they would not be qualified. The only exception would be for those who were fleeing domestic violence. That is the only exception. And then they've suggested that those funds not come out of prevention, but that those come out of rapid rehousing. Go ahead and move on, Terry. Again, eligibility criteria for this and all of the programs, I'm sorry, not including emergency shelter, have to be at or below 50% of area median income in the income verification forms that will be in the PDF format that we will give to all subgrantees. We did link to everybody, or link on that form, the area median income for all of the 7 counties in our implementation area. So if you were serving someone in, say, Stewart County, you would click on the link for the Stewart County AMI, and that way you would have the income limits that are appropriate for the client and where the client is, not necessarily where our agency is. Let me go back, and I forgot my little note here that I was supposed to start with. This implementation is, again, for a 7-county region, being Muskogee, Harris, Stewart, Chattahoochee, Talbot, Taylor, and Marion. So just knowing that you, if you so wish, have the desire and the capabilities to serve folks outside of the Muskogee County region. Of course, it has to be, everybody has to be reassessed at 6 months. And keep on going, Terry. Again, just talking about qualifications and that they have insufficient resources to obtain housing stability. They don't have family and friends and other folks who can help them, and sort of like we're doing now. We've relied on philanthropic organizations and wonderful church runs and volunteer run organizations to help folks through this pandemic. And unfortunately, that kind of need is going to go on for a little bit longer. Our hope was to shift a little bit and to engage landlords in helping their clients to access some of these prevention dollars, so we could give the other agencies who've been working tirelessly since the pandemic started to help with prevention a break. And that's still our hope. Again, it's just about trying to get our congressional folks to understand that though the moratorium sounded great on paper, in reality, it's going to cause more heartache and economic distress going down the road. Go ahead and go over, Terry. Okay, documentation of income. I've already talked about that. Again, it's a DCA form. The homelessness certification, again, a DCA form. And all of the other and again, document. And if you get the documentation, uploading it to case files and client track, way it's always there, and you're not going to be looking for it when it comes time for your review. And without the documentation, reimbursements will not be processed. Reimbursements must be based on the fact that the documentation is there and that the client meets the guidelines. Some of the financial things that are available in prevention in the future, and these are only if the client cannot stay where they are. For instance, it's January the 2nd, and Pat hasn't paid her rent for 5 months, and the landlord couldn't evict Pat because of the moratorium. And now the landlord says, you know what? I don't care that you want to catch up her rent. I'm just done with it. She didn't talk to me. She didn't make any attempts. She didn't give me the declaration form. And that's another thing we'll talk about in a moment, saying that she was invoking her rights. So listen, let's you know, I'm done. So Pat has to go. So these are the expenses that can only be paid if the client has to move to another unit. Speaking of the declaration form, we sent it out last week in our newsletter, and we'll include it again in today's packet of information that goes out. The instructions on the moratorium from the CDC and our federal partners, and the declaration form that the tenant has to fill out and has to give to the landlord. It was suggested yesterday that if the client is working with someone, that perhaps that person could help them to email it with a read receipt. It was also suggested mailing it to the landlord with return receipt requested. If it's an apartment complex, getting them to sign that they received it, make a copy, give it back to them, making sure that those things are delivered, because the declaration form is absolutely necessary to stave off, because eviction can take place if the client doesn't do the declaration form. But that doesn't mean the prevention dollars are applicable, because a client does or tenants have the ability to stave off those evictions with the declaration form. Go ahead, Terry. Some of the other services that are necessary and crucial to prevention and preventing the client to be back in this same position again. And again, you see the case management, the mediation, credit repair, legal services. But again, case management is at the key and at the heart of all we should be doing. Go ahead, Terry. And the type of assistance that's available, and up to 6 months of arrears once the moratorium is lifted. Keep going, please. Talking a little bit about, I'm sorry, it's not Georgia Cares. I was saying it wrong. It's Georgia Gateway. I apologize. But talking about some of the requirements for case management, again, those have to be noted in the client's files. I'm sorry, in the case notes in Client Track. Those case notes will not be viewable by other organizations, but as the fiduciary agent and those who will be writing the check and then seeking reimbursement from DCA, we will be checking those case notes to make sure that the documentation of case management is complete, and actually are coming up with a template on what the standard case management note should look like in reference to noting the time that that case manager spent with that client, because in order to receive reimbursement for the case management, we have to be able to document that case management reimbursement applies to ESG Cares clients only. So we'll be coming up with a template to be used for that documentation purposes. Go ahead, Terry. And again, so just some of the things that are required. You know, you can't do eviction prevention if the person doesn't have a lease. Again, but it has to be uploaded in Client Track so we can have the documentation that that person is on the lease. You know, I can't seek eviction prevention for my daughter's house when I'm not on the lease there. So all of those things, the lead-based paint, again, all of these things are covered in the ESG Cares handbook that we will send out for everybody, and will be again laid out in the sub-grantee contract that everyone will sign that decides to seek funding and is awarded that funding. Just some real good prevention webinars, documents on the HUD exchange that have come out over the past couple of months. Just really good information. Take a swig of water here and stop for any questions real quick. All right, guys, I promise we're on the home stretch. Here we are in our last of our available streams of funding for this implementation is rapid rehousing, and that's exactly what it means, rapid rehousing, making sure that we get folks access and entering into permanent housing very, very quickly. Best practices standards, every community should strive for 30 days or less. Again, income requirements, 50% of area median income. And again, all of those ways to verify that will be on the forms that are sent over as your the subgrantee packets, once contracts are signed. Again, only 2 categories that qualify. None of these categories or these restrictions or qualifications or anything done locally. This comes, again, these are DCA slides that we got permission from DCA, from Marion, to use so that we could just literally just pass the information over. Keep going, please. Again, area median income. Here's the link to the income calculator, and we have the area median income. Links on the income verification forms that each of us will have to use. So there should be no reason we don't have all of that. It's going to be as easy as it could possibly be. Some of the things that are expenses that are covered, moving costs and nothing new to any of you. So go ahead, Terry. Again, some of the requirements, and I say requirements and services that get paid for with the ESG CARES funding is again the same thing as case management and mediation of those things, but the documentation, of course, has to be there, noting how long that client spent with, or the case manager spent with that client. And case management, honestly, it also is doing the things that make it possible. You know, it's getting all the documentation together with the client. It's so much more than, hey, how are you? Just wanting to make sure everything's okay. So this is talking about what's short term and long term, and literally it would usually be up to probably 24 months, but knowing ESG CARES funding is only good for a year, number one. So this funding will expire on September the 30th of next year. So just knowing that now. And you can also do a one-time payment of up to 6 months for rental arrears. And total monthly rent must not exceed the FMR unless you utilize the waiver, and we can show everyone how to do that because right now, you know, we all know that affordable housing is at a premium, and sometimes you may have to go a little bit above. However, knowing that it is your job as a case manager not to set that client up for them to be at risk of homelessness or homeless as soon as the rental assistance stops, because they're in a place that is way more than they can comfortably afford. So that's about increasing income. That's about negotiating. You do not have to have a 1-year lease on ESG CARES. You can have a 6-month lease. So those kinds of things to take into consideration. Again, Georgia Gateway there for access to services and stream benefits. Go ahead, Terry. Again, lease must be in the client's name, must be uploaded to the client track, all these other things that we're so used to. And if we do any housing at all, if we're not doing a habitability inspection, you know, whether it's required or not, we're doing our clients a disservice, to say the least. And of course, lead-based paint statements if they have children or pregnant women. Environmental review, we have already received our environmental review for our area from DCA, so everyone will fall under that. Don't worry about that. We do already have it because we are the project and you guys are the subgrantees. We do have the environmental reviews, and we'll distribute that as part of everyone's subgrantee packet once contracts are signed. Go ahead, Terry. Please know that collaborate, but 2 programs receiving federal, state, or local funds can't be paying the same expenses. So you can't be getting rent from rental assistance from, ESG Cares Rapid Rehousing, and also getting rental assistance from, CDBG funds. So just making sure that we're aware of those kinds of things and doing our due diligence. The best way to do that is if we have it in client track. Other agencies can see that that person is enrolled in your program. And if nothing else, that starts the conversation. So making sure that, we're all doing our due diligence, getting things in there in 3 days, because it would be very easy for someone, if we don't put our documentation, we don't record our services on a regular basis, within the 3 days, as is required with ESG Cares, that a client could get the same benefits from 2 different organizations. So again, and the one at the bottom here is, rental arrears, it's allowable 1 time. And again, that's for up to 6 months. Go ahead, Terry, I'm sorry. There is no match required. There is no match required. However, to ensure that agencies can be able to be financially stable for 1 month is a requirement for moving ahead as a subgrantee. You would need to be able to pay for 30 days of programmatic expenses, and you'll need to demonstrate that through your financial statements that you're submitting as part of your, because reimbursements, we do not anticipate them taking 30 days. And go ahead and pull up the application while I'm chatting about this, Terry. But invoices will be submitted no more than twice a month, but a minimum of once a month. And so, you will need to make sure that, and this is reimbursable. This is a reimbursement. So you'll need to have had those expenses, incurred those expenses, and we will have to have verification that those funds were expended, whether it be a canceled check or a bank statement or whatever, before we can reimburse for those expenses. So we just want to make sure that everybody is able to be able to fund that program at the beginning, and once those things get rolling, there should be no problem. We will work out all the details on what day reimbursements are due and all those other things as we make those contracts for the subgrantees. Quickly going to go through the application, and again, this is a fillable PDF. Go in, work on it, save it, go back, whatever, however you want to do it. But to say that it's a much abbreviated application, just going through just your applicant and project information. Again, I mentioned earlier the 1,000-character limit, so be concise. You have enough space to talk about your program and to paint a clear picture. Hang on 1 second, Terry. But that not so much that it goes way off on a tangent. We want to be able to read it, know what the program's about, and make decisions. Go ahead and, what program are you applying for? If you currently receive funding under ESG, what are you receiving funding for? What kind of programs do you administer? What counties you would like to perform your services in or have available in? Talking about those impacted by COVID-19, talking about HMIS requirements, again, which are in the ESG Cares handbook that we're sending out, so there's going to be no surprise for everybody. Talking about bed capacity for this emergency shelter, and also if the number of individuals you'll be serving. How are we gonna move folks from homelessness to housed, and how quickly are we going to do that, and how we're going to do it. Talking about case management, talking about staffing, staff responsibilities, hours of operation, those kinds of things. I think the next thing is if you have to hire staff, how quickly can you bring them on board? Remember, there is funding for the case management portion of this program, and the case manager is the person who puts the person in client track and all this other stuff. There is funding for that. However, it has to be for ESG Cares only. Talking about if you're going to be doing Hotel-Motel, non-congregate emergency shelter, do you have relationships currently with motels, hotels, or locations where you can, where you'll be able to provide those services? Then it really simply goes into the budget, really concise. The only thing we could not get to do in this PDF fillable format, and I apologize for this, because literally we copied, this is DCA's with just the logo changed, again, with their permission. It does not total at the bottom, so you will need to total that in Excel or on your calculator and put the total at the bottom. But it talks about the things that are eligible for each of the, slow down for just a minute. If you can go just a bit, Terry, just go up just a bit. You know, it will tell you a little bit more. If those things are not going to be able to be funded under ESG cares, it clearly says it. So there's no mistaken. There's no mistaken. So just wanted everyone to see that. If you will, just go ahead and scroll on down. Every one of them looks pretty much the same. The only thing is there's a bit of difference in some as to what is allowable. We alluded to some of that earlier, but this clearly spells out what is allowable in each of the programs for you to get reimbursement for. Again, this goes into talking about each of the programs in your little narrative. Tell us what that budget, we saw the numbers in that budget. What does that mean? And there's examples for everyone here as to what that looks like. Any questions on the application before we go back to the presentation? If you will, just shout, I have a question, or call on me or something in the chat box. I just want to keep everyone muted so we don't have all the background and the reverb that we had earlier. Okay, we don't see any questions in the chat. Go ahead, Terry, if you will go back to our PowerPoint, please. All right, so moving on, we're just about to wrap this up, folks. The application will be, oh, slow down. There we go. The application review panel is here. As you can see, Ben and Chandra from United Way, myself, and Ron King and Rick McKnight, both from, okay, do have a question. Thank you, Lindsay. Sure you missed it, but where can I find the application? You will be sent the application today. Everybody in attendance is going to get the application first with all of the documents that I've mentioned today. We will post it on our website. We will post it on our Facebook page, and a link will also be included in our newsletter on Friday at 4:30. So there you have that. Thank you, Lindsay. So this is the panel who will be reviewing your application. Just a little bit about the scoring of the application. This is very similar to how all ESG rollouts and scoring happens. So we didn't want to do anything that was unusual or out of sorts. So we literally copied this from other ESG scoring score sheets. So again, the points are very there, and because there are some agencies who may or may not have had experience using it, which is our client track, our homeless management information system. But we wanted to make sure that we were allowing folks who do have access to the system. We were trying to make sure that those who did a better job in making sure that their information was in there. If nothing else, all the information that was needed for a client was in there. Our community standard is 5%. So the last 5% for scoring is for those who are in HMIS and using their, and have a completeness of 5% or less. Those agencies, we're not going to be penalized, those who do not use HMIS, but those who use HMIS and they don't have that complete list, they won't get that 5 points. So if it's a new agency, you will automatically get it by default. If you're one who is in and who doesn't conform to the current standards, you will not get those 5 points. I hope I was clear on that. If not, please someone tell me. Go ahead and go, Terry. And again, just a thing at the end here, just a reminder, I use this in a lot of when I do my grants and things. I have a sheet where I have I put a line through it when I know I've attached it, I've uploaded it, and it's all right there. So just sort of a checklist there of the things that have to go with your application. And then the last thing here is our timeline. After today, applications will be due in 2 weeks, on October the 7th. Round 1 awards, which, as we mentioned earlier, will be for rapid rehousing and non-congregate shelter, will be announced on October the 14th. And then the contracts and all those documents will be put together and sent to all the sub-grantees. In fact, we will probably have an implementation workshop where we'll go over everything together. And then the round 2 awards will be announced on November the 4th, and those were for the homelessness prevention. Questions? I think actually my next slide says questions. Yeah. I'm going to take a chance and unmute everyone, just in case someone can't type. I know there was a couple of people on the phone. So, any questions? Everyone is unmuted, just an FYI. I'm going to give it about seconds to make sure we're not missing somebody. Katie, did you have something?
I like how you pick out on me.
No. Excuse me.
Didn't
You
mean to
must have
call
been
you.
moving. You
I
must have
was.
been moving or something. Your name popped up.
But I guess for an agency like mine, I'm not sure that we'll be eligible for this grant. We don't qualify for a sales solicitation permit. So I'm not sure, we're not eligible. We're not eligible to apply for a sales and solicitation, the permit to be we're a nonprofit, but we don't have, we'll talk about it off air. We don't need to.
Okay. Just send me, yeah. And we will compress the recording. In fact, I need right now, before I do anything, I'm saving the chat so we have a record of everybody. And I'm sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time because I will type what I say or vice versa. But we're saving the chat for the record of who was in attendance and yeah, for everybody who was in attendance, so we can make sure that we get it out to everybody. Will be the recording today, all of the documents, the application, the HUD moratorium document, the declaration form, and I think that's it. Is there anything I'm forgetting? Any other questions really quickly before we go?
Pat, it's Lindsay. Can you hear me? I'm having to do this on my phone.
Yep.
Are there limits to, like, with the request? Like, I know when you apply for regular ESG funds for emergency shelter, you can only request $60,000. You can't go, or any of those. And I might have missed it because my computer's not working with me today.
No.
For this.
We are not putting limitations on what an agency can apply for, but understanding that the agency will have to, if you're applying for 60,000 or you're applying for, you say 250,000, you would have to have a higher level of financial stability and policies and procedures. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I have to say that. There is not a limit other than what our community will max out at. So our rapid rehousing max is $691,000. Answer your question.
And then my other question is, if you're applying for more than one, like if you're doing emergency shelter and rapid rehousing and prevention, so do you do 3 applications or is that all in one application? I can't see it on my phone.
It's all on the same one. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd love to take credit for it. It's the DCA application that we did earlier this year. Just the state stuff taken out. So they created it and I got permission to copy it. I cheat off the smart kids. All right, I'm gonna give it 15 more seconds and we're gonna wrap this up, folks. And I appreciate everyone for joining us. This is really exciting. It's a little scary. It's a little nerve-wracking. But again, this can be a huge, huge game changer for meeting the needs of those in our community who are most vulnerable and who now we have the opportunity to serve in a real way. So thank you again all for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and say goodbye to everybody. And